The Incredibles 2 is one of the most disappointing movies I have ever watched. The first movie is an all-time classic in the Pixar library, and there was plenty of room to expand upon the world and characters. But I could go on for quite some time about the elements of this sequel that don't quite work, or are just flat out bad.
If we break off one of the foils and turn the rudder, we can veer the ship away from the city.
That might work.
I'll turn the front.
She just pointed out a smaller part of the city. We can turn it away from the big buildings and hit the suburbs instead.
I am so proud of you.
Why is he upset? I mean, if she succeeds, then it means that he can go and be a superhero too. Can I just say, all these new superhero characters are just so stupid.
But there is one element of this movie that I believe, above all else, is the reason it doesn't live up to the first movie. Its villain, Evelyn Devour, aka the Screenslaver. Also, her name is supposed to be a joke because it sounds like evil endeavor. Just a little fun fact for you there. Okay, now firstly, why I believe Screenslaver fails as a villain is that she's a twist villain whose twist just doesn't work.
What if the pizza guy is really a pizza guy, but it was controlled by the screens built into his glass?
You are good.
Unexpected. Ooh, shocker.
Why does the twist not work? Well, because early on, she says that she invented the camera tech that Screenslaver will clearly be seen using later.
And the picture is outstanding.
Thanks. Designed it myself.
Stay alert, Barnacle Boy. He's up to something.
This makes her an insanely obvious suspect right off the bat. And it is hard to believe no one in the movie would link her tech skills to Screenslaver, especially Elastigirl. Secondly, she clearly shows she has a chip on her shoulder at the start, disagreeing with her brother.
Or Dad could have taken Mom to the safe room as soon as he knew there was trouble.
I disagree strongly, but we're not going into it right now.
Making her an obvious suspect once again, since no one else, and I genuinely mean no one else in this entire movie, ever shows any signs of disliking anything to do with superheroes.
I'm glad to see you back in your shiny outfit. That means so much coming from you.
Look, see, more evidence that despite superheroes supposedly being illegal, no one dislikes them in this movie. You know, it's ludonarrative dissonance. You know, where what's happening on screen doesn't match what we're told.
Basically, my point is that it is too obvious she is the villain. The only other possible suspect of any relevance to the plot is her brother. And sure, he could have been lying about everything, but that wouldn't benefit him, since if he didn't like superheroes, it would make more sense for him to do nothing. The twist might work better if there had been multiple people in the plot who were shown to heavily dislike superheroes. But instead, the movie spends all this time telling us that superheroes are unpopular and that needs to change. But everyone we ever see in this movie only ever shows that they are enthusiastic and excited to see heroes. Not to mention, this movie just has very few important characters who could be the villain. I mean, it's not gonna be Dicker. Tony would be a wild twist, but his mind was erased, so he wouldn't really have a motive, unless he was lying about his mind being erased. Say, this actually sounds like it could have been an interesting direction to take the character. It's definitely not gonna be Edna Mode or Frozone. The ambassador, perhaps? She doesn't do much, and only shows up halfway into the movie. Well, I think I've made my point. The second big reason I think Screenslaver fails is because her tech is far-fetched. What do I mean? Well, the movie never explains how it works. It can hypnotize people, but how? Apparently Evelyn can control people when she isn't even at a computer. How does that work?
Good question.
And on top of that, she can control multiple people at the same time. Once again, how? She claims at one point that she is using pre-recorded dialogue. So how come the characters can do and say things in the moment and react to their environments if everything has to be programmed ahead of time?
Isn't that kinda impossible?
That's a possibility.
Sometimes people are just sitting there empty-headed, and other times, she is controlling an army of supers and having them all act independently at their maximum efficiency.
Rubbish. Such a weapon is scientifically impossible. Doesn't exist.
All this actually leads me nicely to the next angle I want to cover. You see, Evelyn's tech would make more sense if it always just made people hypnotized, and nothing more than that. since it would line up with her opinions on society more. But then again, her opinions on society don't really make sense either, nor do they have basically any relevance to the plot whatsoever.
So what do you remember with the villain of this movie?
You got everything under control.
Not as much as I want to. I remember not really liking her very much.
Evelyn has two goals in this movie, and neither of them are executed very well. One of these goals is to make a point to society that they have become lazy and brainless sheep who just watch stuff all the time and let media control their lives.
I am now going to assault your mind with subliminal messages.
Which might be an interesting theme if it wasn't completely irrelevant to literally everything else in the movie. Like, what does her opinion on this matter have to do with the plot?
Good question.
Basically nothing, other than an extremely thin connection to her disliking of her brother and his corporate selling of things, which is another thing that doesn't have much impact on the plot. Nothing that the Incredibles family or the general public do have anything to do with what Screenslaver is saying. For her opinions to be relevant, she would have to have a point, and the characters would have to reflect upon their own actions and lives to see what she is saying. Like how Buddy's reunion with Mr. Incredible in the first movie makes Bob rethink how he reacted to him in the past, and how, even though he didn't mean to offend him or destroy his dreams, his harsh nature is indeed what caused Syndrome to ultimately become a villain. This later affects how Bob sees his whole life, and how his selfishness and stubborn attitude keep pushing people away, even his own family, who he almost loses. But Screenslaver's comments are basically never brought up, and none of what she says applies to the heroes or changes their views. And how they respond to this doesn't make them into better people, because there basically is no response.
Worse than what you're doing?
Hey, I'm using the technology to destroy people's trust in it.
I'm using it to destroy people's trust in it. Not really. You've not infected people's, own devices or what they watch on TV. You just make, max headroom incident type videos.
I genuinely don't know why any of this was even included in the movie. Possibly there were plans to add in some scenes where Mr. Incredible tries to take the easy way out of raising his family and leave things in the hands of technology and devices, only to let his children be influenced by media and wrongly turn against him because they are led to believe lies about superheroes. But nope, nothing like that happens. And then, of course, there is the other goal of Screenslaver, and the biggest of all the reasons why she fails as a villain. Her plan to make superheroes illegal makes approximately 0 sense. So, get this. Early on in the film, we find out that Evelyn doesn't like superheroes because her father was so dedicated to them that when they didn't arrive to save him as he had hoped, he died. Later, we will find out that this one moment is basically her entire reasoning for what she is doing. And could I just say, what? Are you really telling me that her hatred of superheroes comes from their failing to save just one person on one occasion? Not to mention, said person was specifically obsessed with them. Evelyn acts like it was the superhero's fault for not showing up, when really it was her dad's fault. Nay, his choice to put his life in their hands.
Yeah, so just because your parents relied on superheroes doesn't mean like most people do. For years, they didn't want superheroes. Have you watched the first movie, Evelyn?
The supers did nothing in this event at all. They couldn't come because they were either illegal or being hunted down by Syndrome. Yeah, don't think I didn't notice Gazerbeam is the same hero Mr. Incredible found dead on Nomination Island in the first movie. The true villains were the robbers, who the supers could have stopped if they weren't illegal. This whole event might be fine as anecdotal evidence to support Evelyn's perspective, but as the main reasoning, it makes no sense. The movie doesn't even give her any other reasons for why she is doing what she's doing, other than the extremely far-fetched connection she tries to make between people being lazy and supers being a bad thing. And it gets worse.
Oh no.
Evelyn wants to make sure heroes are illegal, but there's one big problem with that. They already are. Arguably, they shouldn't be illegal since the first movie tries to imply that they are legal again with its ending. But regardless, She technically doesn't have to do anything she does in this movie to achieve her goals, and in fact, as I will soon show, her actions only push her further away from her goal most of the time. All she had to do was try to secretly sabotage her brother's plans to make heroes look good by making their equipment fail or prevent public speakings, etc. But instead, she makes this extremely over-the-top plan that doesn't even have a logical end goal. Now, I hear you all asking, what does Evelyn do exactly? Well, let's see. First, she hijacks a train to put people in danger, in a situation where Elastigirl is right there and can save them, thus making Elastigirl look good for saving them since they would have died without her. Hey, wait a second. Isn't that the exact opposite of what she's trying to achieve? Like, why doesn't she cause a problem in a place without a hero to prove the world doesn't need heroes because people can take care of themselves? No, instead she basically just helps her brother to prove his point instead.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Then she hijacks a news station and some helicopters to put an ambassador in trouble. But guess what? Not only is Elastigirl right there once again, but she literally tells her what she is doing and provokes her into stopping the problem.
I could hijack the ambassador's aerocade while it's still airborne. Right, Elastigirl?
Once again, only helping her brother with his point of view and not proving her point at all, or really doing anything to further her position.
Ironically, if Screenslaver wanted to make superheroes look bad, then Syndrome's plot from the first movie would have made a lot more sense for her to do.
She then tries to set up an event to throw Elastigirl off her trail by framing someone else. But this doesn't make any sense, because the nobody she frames will obviously be innocent when they find out he is telling the truth about not knowing anything.
What's going on? What'd I do? What'd you guys do to me?
That's right, punk. Blame the system.
And all it ends up doing is causing Elastigirl to figure out who she actually is.
Maybe he is a misunderstood genius.
Maybe he is a perfectly understood idiot.
Not to mention, why didn't she just hijack Elastigirl's mind right from the start, thus preventing her from doing anything to make heroes look good? And then, of course, we get the big reveal scene, in which she tells Elastigirl everything. Technically, she doesn't really have a reason to tell her anything other than to gloat and rant. If she was smart, she would probably just keep Elastigirl forever frozen here, or never take the goggles off her. Like, why does she take the goggles off her at all? Just so she can explain her whole plan, giving Elastigirl a better chance at understanding how to stop her?
Anything is possible. You haven't exactly impressed me today.
And all of this brings us to the baffling ending of this movie. The boat ride of doom and stupidity.
Oh dear.
The first major problem that I have here is of course one of my previous complaints, that being how Evelyn can control multiple people at the same time, as it is here that it really gets out of control. But on top of that, her plan to make the heroes look bad has so many holes it's ridiculous. Like, how will anyone believe the heroes genuinely mean what they are saying when they neither sound like themselves, nor do their opinions or personalities match how they've acted in the past?
Good question.
Years of mandated hiding and silence have made us bitter. You bring us out into the light only.
Very believable speaking. This definitely matches her tone of voice when she talks normally.
I mean, there's video evidence of what they were like in the past. It's not like film cameras don't exist in this world. I mean, her whole plan wouldn't work if there wasn't like, cameras and screens. Why would the public believe they would want to mess up this event when it only serves to benefit them?
Good question.
Also, how will nobody notice that every hero who is a jerk happens to wear the same goggles?
That's a very good question. I wish I could think of a good answer.
You're gonna help me make supers illegal forever.
And no one's gonna question that everyone who looks bad wears those glasses.
Yeah.
Like, if she was actually smart, she'd make tiny screens that are contact lenses so no one can tell.
I know.
Which, by the way, Evelyn straight up admits to creating herself.
Hey, did you make the new masks?
Yeah, night vision, etc. They look good, right?
And do I even need to mention that it is obvious that everyone on the ship is being controlled by the giant hypno screen?
And there's not going to be any camera footage of the giant Screenslaver screen brainwashing everyone there, proving that Screenslaver was the one who did it.
And the fact that nobody reacts to the Super's sudden attack. And, as it was revealed earlier in the movie, people who are hypnotized don't remember what happened to them when they were under the control of the Screenslaver.
I have no memory of the event.
So anyone on this boat who would have survived this event would easily be able to prove the Screenslaver was tampering, since they will all have no memory of that moment. And that cannot be a coincidence. Additionally, why does Evelyn wait until after the heroes are officially legalized to make her move?
Good question.
The world is super again.
So she waited for them to, legalize it?
Yes, she
to then make it illegal again?
Yes. Once again, she isn't really doing much to forward her own goals. Instead, she assumedly waits to make it look like they were waiting for the right opportunity to strike. But that's just ridiculous. If the heroes actually wanted to abuse their freedom, then why would they say so publicly? That would only cause the government to immediately reverse their decision. Now, you might think that's exactly what Evelyn wants. But the problem is, it's completely unrealistic. No one is going to believe that the heroes are not being controlled here, especially with how obvious the control goggles are. Also, how on earth was Evelyn ever going to keep control of the heroes if the glasses could fall off so easily? Yes, my army of Doom heroes are ready to attack. No, Mr. Incredible, not that way. There's a big rock. You'll trip. Hey, what's going on here? Supervillain has been controlling my mind the whole time.
I can't imagine what went wrong.
Like, seriously, even the movie backs up my point here. As soon as Elastigirl has her glasses knocked off by Jack-Jack, she's able to free everyone, who are in turn able to free the others in a domino effect.
No!
See, look, if her plans could fall apart so easily, then clearly she didn't think things through, did she?
I know.
Like, what's she gonna do when people find out that her obvious plans are obviously hers? Like,
I know.
She has no backup.
And couldn't you have put a little more effort in making sure they stay on their face? Like, if it's so easy to just take it off, like...
Oh, I swear, sometimes I want to take your big, dummy head and just...
Screenslaver's plan is being held together by the tiniest, thinnest string that could snap at any moment. And also, she has no backup plan either. Where is she going to go if she fails? Escape the country? Live out a boring, pathetic life?
Feel free to roam about the cabin, or just relax and let the cabin roam about you.
Wait, what's she even doing at this point?
This is her master plan. Wait, yo, spinning, that's a good trick.
I mean, what is she even gonna do if she wins?
The reputations of superheroes are ruined.
What? That's insane to hear what you're saying?
Like, she's saying all this as if she has somehow already won. Even though every single thing that she's done has failed. It's all only proved superheroes are right. It made her, as Screenslaver look like the villain.
Her goal to make heroes illegal doesn't really benefit her in any way personally, so I guess it really just boils down to revenge. Revenge for an event she wasn't even a part of, and is a stupid reason to hold a grudge in the first place.
What a stupid fool you are.
The fact that you saved me doesn't make you right.
So, did they even need to explain anything, or was it so obvious that they're like, nah, yeah, she's the villain.
Yeah,
we'll arrest her.
Yeah, the fact that they don't have to explain anything just proves how stupid her plan is.
Evelyn/Screenslaver is, in a lot of ways, the anti-syndrome, since she is a villain who just gets worse and worse the more you think about her and her plans. At first, you think she's a cool twist villain who has intriguing political commentary and a crazy plan that makes her super dangerous. But then you sit on things, and more you start to see that basically none of that is true, and it only appears to be at first because the movie has decently good presentation. I mean, Brad Bird is a good director, and of the films of his that I have seen so far, this is probably his weakest. So I generally expect him to be able to create great content. I think he just needed more time to refine the script, really rework the villain plan and motivation, and maybe make a few changes to the family dynamic, and it might have been a pretty solid film. The first movie, on the other hand, is so perfect that I continue to be impressed with it year after year. In contrast to Evelyn, Buddy is a character who I only find more interesting the more I analyze him. I already made a whole video doing so because I thought it was so interesting. But the crazy thing is, I actually missed a few important details in that video. For example, I said Buddy remembered the moment Mr. Incredible rejected him once and for all perfectly, but I was actually wrong. And that's a good thing, because a detail that I ended up missing, which my comment section very kindly pointed out to me, actually adds even more depth to Syndrome. While Buddy does obsess over the event and refuses to let it go from his memory, the way he remembers it in his head is slightly different from reality. In his mind, he has completely forgotten about Bon Voyage, and remembers the moment as Mr. Incredible deliberately speaking down to him just because he didn't like him. This shows us that Buddy's obsession with that moment has made him believe that Mr. Incredible's denial was a deliberate screw you moment to the idea of him ever being a hero. And it removed the nuance of Mr. Incredible's position, since he was trying to deal with a villain and Buddy was starting to get on his nerves. Anyway, my point is that Syndrome is a villain who gets better with more analysis and critical examination of his character, and Evelyn only gets worse. Hopefully, The Incredibles 3 will bring the franchise back to what it was like in the first movie, with rich characters and world building, and a lot of depth and details, all carefully considered.
So, what are your hopes for Incredibles 3?
I'm worried.
Oh, and before any of you comment, I actually did not plan for this video to tie into the new announcement of the third movie. That is just a coincidence. But hey, who am I to deny extra views based on happy coincidence? I, of course, must now give a special shout-out to all my patron supporters as well as channel members who go that extra step in supporting me. It would also be really cool if you followed me on many of the social media sites I have a presence on, and I also additionally have a YouTube gaming channel if you want to check that out. Links in the description to all that stuff below. And while you're still here, if you haven't seen it yet, why don't you check out my video on Syndrome from the first Incredibles movie? Or if you're not interested in that, then maybe a video for some other Pixar movie. I've got a whole playlist of Pixar-related stuff. But most importantly of all, always remember to be iconic.